Hello, welcome to my retirement roadmap. This is the next video in a series of videos on Roth conversions. I'm calling the series Roth Conversion Workshop. So here we are. I did want to mention again that these are beta release videos, so they're unedited, and but I wanted to get something out there. We are right in the season for Roth conversions for 2025, and I needed to get some information out as quickly as possible. So this video is going to start talking about things that are not necessarily directly financially beneficial for Roth conversions. There are other things, other considerations for doing Roth conversions, and that's kind of what I wanted to bring up here. So the first thing that you can see, and I'm referencing off my website, tyrollins.com, you can see that I've got here tax planning. So if a person, let's take an example of a household that only has tax deferred income. So it's just a traditional 401k, rewind again, not edited, right? A traditional IRA or a 401k or some other flavor of a qualified retirement plan from an employer. Okay, so you've got some tax deferred income in there, and that's really all you have. You really don't have much savings sitting in a bank account, anything like that, and you don't have any Roth money. So really what happens is when you withdraw money from those tax deferred accounts, you have to pay taxes on them, and you don't have a lot of flexibility there. Also, if you are at the age where you need to make required minimum distributions, RMDs, and that's for people who are 73 right now. In a few years, that's going to jump up to, you can wait until you're 75 before you have to do the required minimum distributions. But those things they're forcing you to pay taxes, basically, and you don't have a lot of flexibility on that. So what makes things a lot better is, if you do a Roth conversion, is you could have money that sitting in there that if you need to dip into that Roth money to help make sure your current year taxable income doesn't spike for whatever reason, that adds a lot of flexibility in your tax planning. It really does. I'm going to give a kind of a personal example. Earlier this year, we got into a situation where we were like, we need to replace our vehicle, our main vehicle for how we get around, etc., right? And it was not planned. And the idea was we didn't want to go into debt, right? Don't want to take out a loan for this. But what that meant is if we didn't end up having to do that, but the idea was if we had pulled the money out for a new car, that would all be coming out as taxable income and would have, extreme example is would be close to doubling our income and putting us into higher tax brackets and whatnot. But if we had the money in Roth, sitting in Roth, we could just take it right out of there, and that makes tax planning a lot better. And also, not to get too complicated here, but for example, if you have a brokerage account in addition to these qualified tax deferred or a Roth account, for example, and you are trying to harvest some capital gains, for example, and you want to keep the rates low, long-term capital gains rates, or even the dividends, if you have Roth money sitting there that you could tap into to keep yourself low in a year to do that such thing, it just makes it much easier. And so you have some strategies there that you can implement. Roth makes that much better. So that's one reason why to have Roth. Okay? Another thing, okay, we're talking about certainty here, and what I'm saying is you can lock the rate in of your taxes. And this is kind of like, people would say, what are you talking about? This is kind of confusing. So I'll give you an example from me. I like certainty and I like to be in control. I really do. Those are just two of my you can call them idiosyncrasies or whatever. I do. I like certainty and I like control. However, when you have money in a tax deferred account, okay, let's say I've got money in my 401k. All right, so there's a lot of variables there that are not in my control, and one of them are tax brackets. Okay, because this year we saw that the tax brackets were made permanent. The lower tax brackets were made permanent, and so that was really beneficial for a lot of people, very helpful. And it kind of took out some of the steam to do Roth conversions, because before it's like, hey, those tax brackets are go up. You need to in 2025. You need to do them, or you're going to miss out on this window. Well, those lower tax brackets were made permanent, so it kind of took the steam out. But at the same point, to me, I look at this as, wow, how fast did Congress do this to change? Or, they made things permanent, right? So it really was a change. They made it permanent because they were temporary. So they made them permanent. That was really a change in law, okay? Now, let's say that the next, Congress administration comes in and they're like, hold on, these tax rates are too low. We need to pay this debt off. And they're going to say, okay, we're going to increase tax rates. We're going to go back to the way they were before. Okay? And that can happen very, very quickly. So what I'm trying to say is, we don't really know what the future tax bracket is going to be. There's a lot of uncertainty there. We don't have much control over that. For me, my personality, I like certainty. I like to have control. So when I do a Roth conversion, I've locked in those tax brackets. They're done. It's done. You pay the taxes. It is what it is. I now I've made that certain, and I will not have to pay any more taxes on that. So that's what I'm talking about. You can get the certainty and you can get the control by doing Roth conversions. It does not, by any stretch of the imagination, mean that you're going to be paying less taxes at all. We just don't know. We don't know what's going to be what's going to happen. So that's where I'm going with this. It's not a financial decision. It's not saying, we're going to be so much better off because less taxes. It's just saying it's done. I know what I've got. It's happened. I'm in control. Don't need to worry about some fickle Congress or administration that's going to change things on me. I just don't have to worry about that. So that's another reason for some people to do Roth conversions. Okay? The next one here is longevity insurance. Now that's a strange way of putting this and describing this as far as one of the benefits. But I think it's super important. And we're going to have to dial a little bit deeply into this just to kind of set the stage. But if you're in a house, if you're married and you're married filing jointly, okay, the tax brackets for that are almost, I think they're pretty much double of what they are for a single person. Okay? So if you have a couple and one spouse passes away, and they pass along, the person who passes away passes their tax deferred accounts onto their spouse, which is pretty much, that's typically what almost always happens. I mean, there are exceptions, of course. But then what happens is the surviving spouse now has to pay a lot more taxes on that same amount of income they were getting when they took withdrawals from their tax deferred accounts. And sometimes it's called the widow's penalty or whatnot. So basically what we're saying is, if you do the Roth conversions, while you're married and alive, both of you are alive, you can take advantage of those married filing joint tax brackets. And so when we talk about the, quote, insurance aspect of it, it is insurance for the surviving spouse. So that is already the taxes have been paid. The overall taxes should basically be a lot less, not exactly half of what they'd be if they were in the single bracket, but we're getting pretty close to that. So anyway, that's the longevity insurance involved. And I know, here's the other thing. It is very helpful for the surviving spouse. That's why we call it longevity insurance. And I didn't come with that on my own. I've seen that, heard that, and that's kind of the way it's described. So anyway, here are some benefits to consider for doing Roth conversions. Thanks, and I look forward to doing the next video.